Welcome back, everyone. We have NextSource Materials Inc. It trades on the OTCQB under the symbol NSRCF and on the TSX under the symbol NEXT, and is a strategic materials development company based in Toronto, Canada, that is intent on becoming a fully integrated global supplier of critical battery and technology materials needed to power the sustainable energy revolution. Please welcome the Executive Vice President, Brent Nykoliation. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Anna. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time today. So today I'm taking you through a very exciting project we have that is approaching production this fall in the next 2.5 months. So as Anna had mentioned, we are a Canadian-based company. We trade on the TSX primarily, but also on the American Exchange. And we've been developing an asset in Madagascar, which is graphite. I'll explain today the importance of graphite. As many people know, it's been getting a lot of attention lately as one of the critical battery materials. But what's differing and how we're approaching this is we are looking at a full vertical integration strategy where we will be taking our graphite literally from the mine to the battery. And that's a very differentiation stage across various projects. From the very onset, which is important to talk about because of the whole importance around environmental social governance, is we've been doing everything to Equator Principles and the IFC standards and development standards from day one. So again, as we move forward and become a producer, everything we're doing today and we've done before ensures transparency throughout. One of the things we bring up right away is that we are a publicly traded company, but we are fully funded as well, and that's brought us into production. But one of our largest shareholders is a company called Vision Blue Resources, and this is run by a gentleman very well known in mining named Sir Mick Davis. Mick Davis made his name developing Xstrata, which became the world's largest mining company, and it was acquired by Glencore. But Sir Mick basically had acquired critical commodities to help drive the urbanization of China. And he started this fund, Vision Blue Resources, to basically do the same thing, but his focus now is on the critical battery materials. And NextSource was his first and largest investment at the time. He owns about 40% of NextSource, and he is also our chairman. So we have a tremendous amount of experience from the mine operations side, et cetera. But we're very privileged to have such an important investor in our company. So about our project, as I mentioned, we have a graphite project. We have a flake graphite project, and a lot of projects out there that are graphite. Flake is the only form of graphite that goes into all the top demand markets. Our project is in Madagascar, which, if you're not aware of where that may be, that's just an island off the east coast of Africa. We are located in the Yellow Star. We will be using the port of Fort Dauphin, which is where Rio Tinto operates a very large project. And as well on the island is one of the largest projects, nickel projects and cobalt projects in the world. And again, Madagascar we've been there over 14 years. We discovered the graphite about 10 years ago, and it's taken us that long to discover it, bring it into production, and now we're at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So phase one, we are building several phases, but phase one will commission this fall. We have the mining environmental permits secured for over 40 years, so we are well ensconced and comfortable in expansion in the country. And as I mentioned before, we'll be going today to talk about our vertical integration strategy for taking this product literally from the ground and moving it into the battery. So one of the things about our project which really stands out is just the sheer size and the quality of our graphite. So Madagascar has been shipping graphite for over 100 years, but in very small quantities, but it's always been known to have one of the highest quality graphites in the world. This is a brand new discovery. We discovered it back, as I mentioned, almost 10 years ago. It's a very large resource, but very, very expandable. And that's critical right now with the demand that's happening with graphite. So we have over 140 million tons, but that only represents about 2% our current deposit of the entire graphite trend. We have identified over 300 kilometers, 186 miles of continuous graphite all at the surface on our property. So we literally have unlimited expansion to meet the markets. Our product has been trademarked as Superflake. We have actually trademarked that in all major markets across the world. And our product has been verified by end users, significant companies that are across the spectrum of where graphite is usually used and is critical. So there's over about 200 products a day that we all touch that is critical, and how graphite plays within those products. So lithium ion batteries, it's critical in steel making and refractories, fire retardants, consumer electronics. All of your iPhones contain graphite foils. Your computers, your solar panels all have graphite sheets in there that help with the thermal conductivity and the thermal protection of these products. And of course, there's this new thing called graphene, and graphene is one of these super materials, and graphene comes from, it's a single layer of a graphite flake. Our product has been verified for all these applications by end user companies. So the verification has been complete. This is the mine that we'll be building, and has been built, but is being reassembled. So this is the actual representation of what the plant is going to look like in about 2.5 months' time. The bottom pictures are actually the plant that when it was actually built and fabricated offshore. We had built the entire plant. Then we did a factory acceptance testing where we actually ran it and tested it. Then we dismantled it and then put it on a ship, and it's been sent to Madagascar to be reassembled. And just this past couple of weeks, all of the plant has now arrived into Madagascar, has been offloaded, and our modules are being shipped to site. So this entire plant was built as a modular build design. So there's about 35 modules. They basically will all click together like a Lego set. So we've actually built it, tested it, dismantled it, and now are reassembling it at the mine site. And this has given us the advantage of doing it not only low cost, but also we were able to construct this from the moment we started construction and have it up and running within 1 year, which is very fast in the mining world. Our project as well will incorporate a hybrid power solution. So our mine will be running off both renewable energy and thermal energy. So when this thing is up and running, we will be able to have about 30% of the power coming from renewable energy, particularly solar. Madagascar is blessed with a lot of solar. And then we will be trying to increase this to about 50% as we move forward in our expansion over time of our mine. So what differentiates us amongst several things, but one of them is the offtakes we actually have. So we already have secured 10-year offtakes with two very notable companies. You may recognize these logos, but ThyssenKrupp being one of the world's largest steel manufacturers and traders of graphite. That's for our product going into the steel industry, which represents roughly 66% of the consumption of graphite today. The other portion is going into the battery world, and that's the anode side. And we are now have a partner with the Japanese partner who supplies one of the largest anode processors of graphite, battery grade graphite, into electric vehicles. And these offtakes right now are secured. And right now we are looking at immediately moving to a mine expansion, because our phase 1, which will be 17,000 tons, that's above average for a graphite mine, we will have to move to phase 2 just to satisfy the demand on the offtakes that we're having for graphite, the interest in our product. So you can see using our modular build that our phase 1 is a very small footprint, very environmentally sound in terms of its small footprint. So 60 meters by 100 meters. And then we'll be looking at phase 2 expansion of up to 10 times that size, additional 150,000 tons. And again, being it modular, it's only about 30% larger than our phase 1. So again, these are very efficient and again, very low cost for us to operate. In terms of graphite, many people don't realize the importance of graphite when it comes to the portion and its role in an electric vehicle battery. It's often ignored. Usually it's the anode, the cathode, the cobalt, the lithiums, the nickels, the manganese that are often talked about when it comes to lithium ion batteries. But graphite plays a critical role, and so critical that in fact, graphite has been deemed to have critical material status in most of the G7 countries. So again, its importance to defense, consumer electronics, transport, batteries, it's absolutely critical, and it's now become the top agenda for most of the countries when it's coming to the raw material and the security supply of these materials. So if you're not familiar with what graphite does in a battery, it sits on the negative side of the battery, which we call the anode. And then there's, of course, the positive side, which is the cathode. And that's where you see your lithium, your nickel, your cobalt, your manganese, iron, etc. It does not matter what the chemistries are. And when you have a lithium ion battery, there's many chemistries that are being discussed, whether or not you have a lot of nickel in them, a lot of cobalt. Regardless of the chemistry, graphite is always on the negative side, the anode, and in very large quantities. It represents by volume more than half of the battery. So when you look at that in terms of what that is in an electric vehicle, it's a lot of graphite. So you're looking at somewhere between 200 to 250 pounds per electric vehicle. In hybrids, it's roughly about 80 to 150 pounds for hybrid vehicles. But this is a lot of material that goes into these car batteries. And we're looking at right now the forecast for electric vehicles and what is that doing to what could potentially be the forecast for graphite. If you look at the graph on the left, you can see right now and where we are currently today, about 1 million tons of graphite is produced every year in the world, with roughly 30% of that going towards batteries. And the yellow bar represents the size of the graphite flake that is normally used as the feedstock to make battery grade graphite. And you're looking at a 10 times forecasted growth just for electric vehicles alone. The steel side, which takes the majority of the other sizes, is also growing at 3 to 4 or 5% per year per annum, and is usually in lockstep with GDPs, but it's critical in the steel making process. So you have two very, very established offtakes and demand potentials happening. The graph on the right takes that 10 times forecast and it compares it to how many graphite mines are currently operating today in the world. That's the yellow bars. The blue bars are every single possible, probable, or highly probable graphite mine coming online in the next 5 years. And there's not nearly enough projects that will meet this demand. Quite simply, you will need more graphite mines in production to meet this demand. So when you look at freight graphite that comes out of the back of our mine, how is that processed? It's a very easy thing to process. You mine it, you crush and grind it, then you take that graphite, you put it into water. It's called the flotation process. Graphite loves to float. It actually does not like water, so it floats to the top. And then you would skim it off, you dry it and bag it. And that material goes into the steel world. If you want to go to the battery world, then you have to do 3 other processes to move it into a lithium ion battery. You take that flake graphite and you spherinize it. You literally shape it into a ball. You then purify it to 99.9% purity, carbon. And then you have to coat it with more graphite. So that spherical purified graphite is referred to as SPG, and the coated material is referred to as CSPG. The car companies, the OEMs want to buy a coated spherical purified graphite. That's the form of graphite that will go into a lithium battery. As you move up this value chain, you get a lot more money for your graphite. But what's interesting is where the United States and the rest of the world sits versus China when it comes to the flake graphite resources. So roughly 70% of the world's graphite is found in China. They process 100% of the material today to go into battery grade graphite that goes in electric vehicles. And we're looking at the coated process, you're looking at still China dominating it. But what's interesting here is the United States has zero mines that are in production. They don't do any processing that goes into the battery. So 100% reliance on imports for United States and also for Europe. So again, what you're seeing here is this dominance by China, which is now driving a lot of discussions and a lot of focus now from corporations who are finding and looking desperately for resources that are outside of China. And given the geopolitics that are happening in the world with China and Taiwan, we have Ukraine and Russia being another large source of graphite in the world as well. These become zones and countries that are basically off limits. So the projects that are out there that are critical to get into production are even more so. And NextSource has a plan now to take, because our mine will be opening up, as I mentioned, this fall. But what are we doing now to meet this demand for the battery grade graphite? So over about 3 years ago, we put together a very comprehensive strategy, and we secured a very unique partnership with a Japanese processor, one of the top processors of SPG, spheronized purified graphite, and coated SPG. And this particular partner has asked to partner with NextSource to build a anode facility, which we will own 100%. We will operate it, but we will use their processing IP, intellectual property. The process to actually value and upgrade your graphite from a flake into a battery grade graphite is extremely technical. So our partner will be basically giving us the processing technical know-how to be able to convert our graphite into battery grade graphite. And just so you understand who this partner is, they are quite a significant contributor to the OEMs, the car companies in Japan. They have about 35% market share of all that battery grade material that goes into the Japanese market. But you can see from the diagram, they supply 4 of the top 5 anode processors. These are the companies that convert your flake graphite into battery grade graphite. And you can see that right now they are one of the exclusive and largest providers of flake graphite and SPG to Tesla and the Toyota supply chains, as well as Honda and also BMW. So our partner is very well established and has been in this market and providing material for over 16 years. So what this allows us to do is we will have a partner, and NextSource, through that partner, will have a proven and established processing solution where we will take our graphite, which is represented in the yellow as our mine. So we will process our graphite into a flake graphite product, which we can sell on average for about $1,200 to the steel world. But then by moving it through and value adding it for the battery world, we're looking now at increased margins. But again, it's using this plant that we will build to then provide a coated spherical purified graphite. And you can see that the average sales price for these particular products jump dramatically. So one of the big things that comes when you're actually a graphite project and you're looking to say, okay, I want to go and I want to address and sell my product to the OEMs. What a lot of the investors don't realize is the actual verification process, how long it actually takes to get these offtakes with an OEM. So 2 things is it took us 6 years to get our offtake with ThyssenKrupp. It took us over 6 years to get our offtake with the Japanese partner that supplies the Tesla and Toyota supply chains. But that process, once you even got to that, then you need to go through a 2 to 3 year verification process. And this is them taking your graphite, converting it into battery grade graphite, a CSPG, and then putting it into batteries and running vehicle tests. So once that's all done, it's another 2 to 3 years before you will have the approval to put your graphite into a battery. And what's unique about our partner is that we've actually been able to short circuit this. We can actually eliminate almost a year of this timeline and move right to a vehicle test. So we have some fine tuning on the cell module pack design, which could be accelerated, but the vehicle test, every single graphite company will need to go through a 9-month, roughly to a year, of having your material put into cars and then driven around. So NextSource right now with our Japanese partner, our next step with one particular OEM is to actually have a vehicle test. So once our mine is opened up, we will be able to start supplying material to begin that test. So right now, what is our timeline and what are we doing and what is our growth as we move forward? So as I mentioned, our mine in Madagascar, our phase 1, will be opening up very shortly in the next 2.5 months. We will then start that verification process with the OEMs to get our product in both markets with our refractory off-taker with ThyssenKrupp, but more importantly, get that vehicle test started in the OEMs. And then what we'll be doing as well is we will be opening and putting in production our first phase 1 of our battery anode facility. And this will be a verification plant. So the volumes will be a bit smaller, but it'll be built close to our mine site in Madagascar. And then as we move forward, we'll be looking to expand our mine in Madagascar based on the demand that's forecasted for electric vehicles. As I showed you before, you're going to have more mines will have to come online. And some of the forecasts just with individual car companies are staggering. So some of these forecasts, you're looking at 60,000 to 100,000 tons per year by 2025 required for graphite for one car company. In order for us to even to meet one car company, we would have to expand our mine 10 times the size, an additional 150,000 tons at least, in order to meet that potential demand. And then what we'll do after that is build a secondary facility, a much larger one in North America, Europe, to start meeting the demands of the OEMs. And of course, then phase 3 expansions will be in lockstep with that demand. So as demand requires, as the markets for electric vehicles move forward, NextSource has that build-out plan that we can expand very easily in Madagascar, but also start building the value-added facilities to process that material into the coated spherical purified graphite, which is what's required to go into a battery. So what we have a plan right now, and what attracts the OEMs to our story is that we have the upstream and the downstream solutions kind of mapped out. We can basically build our operations to meet any demand. So we're going to have our mine that's represented in the gray Lego block in Madagascar. Then we look at the yellow blocks being our value-added battery anode facilities. We'll be able to start these and then expand as required to the market. So as we start getting some contracts with OEMs, which we hope will be happening in the next 6 to 9 months to lock these in after the vehicle tests, we'll be able to go and start expanding and building these facilities where required and as required by the OEMs. So again, we're able to scale to meet all the demand. So why NextSource? What's making us stand out there when we're looking at our project? We will be the next graphite project to reach production outside of China. There's no other graphite project that will be in production in 2022. Many may not be in production in 2023. Most are probably 2 years away from funding. It takes at least 18 to 24 months to build the mines. We were able to do that in less than a year because we used a modular build approach. That's our unique selling proposition. So as we expand, we'll be using our modular build designs that we've got, and that allows us that speed to market, that barrier to entry against our competition. Once again, anything we do from the moment we have a go decision, it's roughly a 12-month window from us to start the construction and commission either an anode facility or our mine expansion. We have a best-in-class technical partner for the battery anode processing. We do not have to go through that research and development phase. A lot of the graphite projects out there that will be saying to investors, which of course they would, that they will be going to the electric vehicle market. But it is a very, very complicated and technical process. It's going to require millions of dollars and years potentially of R&D. We have all that eliminated because we've partnered with someone who's been doing this already for notable OEMs already, and particularly brand names in Japan. And as well, that exclusive access. So this partnership with the Japanese partner is exclusive to NextSource. We are partners, and we are now looking at building these anode facilities together, where again, NextSource will own it 100%, operate it, but the partner brings in the technical IP. We are able to do this at a very low cost, also a very low operating cost, which is very important as investors looking at the money that can be made. And again, we have the feasibility studies for these particular plants should be out at the end of this year, where we can start to illustrate to the market the economics around the anode facilities. And again, if you're interested in the economics around our plant in Madagascar, that's already public information. You can go to our website and see the economics of the actual mine. In terms of, again, where you can find NextSource, and if you're interested in following us and in our shares, we are on the TSX, we're on the big board in Toronto, but we're also, again, on the OTCQB in the US and under the ticker symbols as you see on the screen. But again, we've had a nice lift lately in our share price. It's as we're approaching production. But again, as I've illustrated, hopefully today, there's a lot more coming with NextSource. We are a materials company, not a graphite company. So we're going to be, again, developing ourselves to meet and get into the critical battery materials that are going to be driving the industry for at least the next decade. And it is a very, very exciting time for commodities and battery material companies like ourselves as we transition from the internal combustion engine into electric vehicles. And with that, if you have any information or want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at brent@nextsourcematerials.com or go to our website at nextsourcematerials.com. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. And back to you, Anna.
Great presentation, Brent. We have lots of questions for you. Let's start with Zane. He wants to know, how difficult is it to get a graphite project going?
So it's difficult. So as I say to a lot of people in the mining world, I mean, 1 in 1,000 projects, you will end up, again, this is all to do with discovery. You're actually exploring. So the fact you can hit something that's economical and has substance to actually bring into mine is actually quite rare. And then as you discover these things, to actually have something that's economic that you would actually want to build it and get the funding for, you know, it's even harder. So there's always that axiom in mining where it's 1 in 1,000, you'll actually find something, and then 1 in the thousands of those actually reach a mine. So here's NextSource 10 years ago discovering the graphite, and here we are developing it, getting the offtakes, growing this asset, which is one of the largest graphite discoveries in the world. And, you know, it took us a long time, but, you know, it's a rare commodity to find. There's no shortage of graphite in the world. There's a shortage of economic graphite. So even if you found it necessarily, it's not necessarily large enough or economic where you would actually put it into a mine. So there's lots and lots of graphite companies around the world that are trying to do that. But again, we've been blessed to find a very large, very high quality and expansive resource, which again is low cost. So for us, yeah, it's been serendipitous to have all three connect, and here we are.
Wonderful. Milton Connor wants to know, how many graphite projects are actually out there and functioning, ready to go?
So there's about, I mean, if you look it up, I think there's probably about 100 junior graphite companies maybe in the world. I would say, and again, this is a geologist who would coin this term, but lots of pretenders, very few contenders. And the issue there with this whole entire market is graphite's a very opaque industry. So to find information on graphite is not easy, and it's a closed industry. So of those 100 projects, there's probably 10 or 12 that actually have technical studies that an investor like yourselves could go there and say, okay, let me read up on whether or not they have the right material. Do they have enough? Is it economic? And then of those particular projects, which ones are going to stand out that would even be funded by institutions? And I would say that would be, you know, 5 or 6. And of those, how quickly can they get into production? So you might have a quality project, but you might even be in a jurisdiction which is difficult. You might have a project that is good, but it's very, very expensive. There's projects right now out there that are over $1 billion to build. And similarly, like ours, we would be much, much less for that. So again, the modular plant that we built was only $24 million to put in production. And some companies are looking at similar projects our size that would be in the $50 to $60 million range. So again, these are, you'd have to have something that's difficult, but it's not easy to bring a graphite mine in production. In the last 30 years, there's only been 2 projects outside of China that have actually reached production. So they are rare.
Wow. I didn't know that last fact. That's fascinating. Chris Wong wants to know, according to your press release in late 2021, you signed a binding agreement with a key processor of anode material with the Tesla supply chain for collaboration on building a battery anode facility. Do you have any updates on that front?
Yes. So that was what I alluded to in the presentation. Is our partner is that Japanese partner that we have now partnered with. So right now we will be looking to bring out information at the end of this year on the next steps. As I mentioned, we are looking at building an anode facility, a verification facility close to our mine, and we'll have information out by the end of the year on that location and information on potential timing of starting of construction, et cetera. Again, our access to capital and our access to raising money has been greatly reduced, and with our investor, Vision Blue Resources. So we have a very large, deep-pocketed investor, but also the fact that battery materials right now are extremely strong. We have, in our opinion right now, no issues whatsoever in raising funds to do this. But again, we're doing things in phases. What's interesting about NextSource is we're building things fit to purpose. So, and unlike other graphite companies that would try and go out there and build very large projects out of the gate that are very expensive, we're starting off much smaller. So again, it's that speed to market, barrier to entry, get the product up and running, get it out there, and then we can easily expand organically with that market. And that's the choice that we've done, and it's worked very well. We will be the next graphite project in production and the only one this year outside of China.
Fantastic. Jeremy asks, with the passing of the IRA this week, has there been any thought to constructing the anode facility in the US or Canada or other US designated trade agreement partners to allow for advances in the EV market for graphite use, since Madagascar is not on that list of countries?
Absolutely. So our anode facility will not be in Madagascar. It will be where it'll be in the regions of North America, Europe. So the OEMs are dictating where those plants need to be, but really it's also it's where the market is. So North American market for electric vehicles is going to be one of the largest in the world, followed by Europe. So absolutely, that is exactly where these things will be built. Again, more information will be coming from our plans, but I can rest assure you, and I wish I could speak more to it, but I can't. But if you're a graphite project, you are being inundated by the OEMs right now. You are being approached by car companies asking you several things. First of all, what is your capability of getting in production in the next 2 to 3 years? Most of these car companies require huge amounts of graphite material by 2025. The forecasts going out to 2040 are looking to actually increase the graphite market 15 to 20 times. I mentioned 10 today because that is more of a conservative approach. But even if I'm half right, it's a tripling, quadrupling of the graphite market based on the electric vehicle surge. So these projects are going to be vigorously, pursued by the OEMs. And I can assure you NextSource is involved in many advanced conversations on those fronts, as I'm sure other graphite projects as well.
Wow, fascinating. Emerson Hoffman says, you mentioned you're working near Rio Tinto. Is there potential for a joint venture with a major like that?
There's always a potential for a major. Rio Tinto is an excellent partner. So, I mean, Rio Tinto is actually getting into battery materials. They're more on the cathode side. So they're on the cathode end of the battery. Again, we're the anode side. But yes, we have conversations with Rio Tinto. We're actually sharing the port with them. But again, there's much larger entities out there like Rio Tinto's that are actually very focused on battery materials. And I can assure you as well that those conversations are in play as well.
And last question from Chris Contreras. He wants to know a little bit more about the investor component. So let's speak to the investors out there. What should investors know about NextSource?
So as I mentioned before, I mean, all investors, when they're looking at graphite and battery materials, number one, do your homework. As I mentioned, graphite space is a bit more difficult. It's a very opaque market. But of the projects out there, there's a lot of misinformation on in the marketplace about graphite, about the ability of projects to go to an end product, which is the coated spherical purified graphite. Again, those processes are extremely technical. So most graphite projects out there can produce a flake graphite that can go immediately to the steel market, to the graphite foil markets with some easy upgrading. But when you're looking at moving to the battery world, it's really about the capabilities of the project to be able to do that. So where is the verification? Where are they on that curve? There's graphite companies out there that have no idea what the next steps are in terms of verification. Many out there don't realize the timelines included. It takes up to 3 years to get verified by an OEM. And there's graphite projects out there that actually do a great job. So ourselves, there's 2 others that we know of that do a very good job of making sure that they do the right verification and they're doing the right steps. So what I would encourage you to do is call up the companies, look online. If you ever want to have a conversation with NextSource, we would be happy to share with you things that you should know and look at in terms of how to evaluate graphite projects. And again, there's several out there that are quality, but you have to do your homework to make sure you identify them.
Brent, this has been a fantastic presentation. Do you have any closing remarks for our viewers?
Not anything in general, then just keep an eye on NextSource. Again, we've been ramping up. We're one of the quieter companies. We are a technically focused company, but as we approach production this fall, the news flow will be increasing this year, but also into next year as we move forward on all of our anode plans, our expansions, etc. So again, we are a materials company. We are not satisfied, nor are we resting at being just a graphite project. Not to exclude the fact that we have a very high quality vanadium asset in Madagascar, which is on our property about 9 miles, 12 kilometers away. And again, another strategic battery type of commodity. Vanadium is also now being used as one of the top commodities and materials in energy storage. And you might have heard of the vanadium redox battery. So again, we have two very strategic commodities, battery materials on our project. And right now we're focused 100% on the graphite because of the sheer demand for the material that's required in electric vehicles. But again, NextSource has, I believe, a bright future, and keep an eye on us. Our news will start to come out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. And please join us again in the future with your updates.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Stay with us. We're going to transition to the next presenter. We'll be right back.